Now available in paperback and coming to Kindle Unlimited, John Haynes, Dark Succubus. The man who rules the world is tempted by a sultry succubus in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Dark Succubus in paperback or pre-order on Kindle Unlimited today. I got a chance to take a look at the trailer for Terminator Dark Fate. And after looking at the trailer for Terminator Dark Fate, I can honestly say that the fate of the Terminator franchise is terminal because this franchise has no place to go. Now, your Terminator Dark Fate is a desperate attempt by the producers to revive a dying franchise, and they make a critical mistake in trying to revive that franchise by injecting identity politics into the Terminator story, and as it gets woke, it's about to go broke. Because your Terminator Dark Fate makes the exact same mistake that your Ghostbusters made in 2016 and what the CW made with its Batwoman trailer. They're trying to promote the whole idea of this Terminator franchise, and they're trying to do it by showing that this Terminator is going to be a strong woman, and she's going to go out here and protect a little girl. So they've changed the narrative of the Terminator story from a male story about John Connor learning how to survive to become the great hero he was going to become in the future. And they've also walked away from the whole time travel paradox in order to give us a story that is rooted in feminism, rooted in identity politics, and has no real substance whatsoever. Because what I saw on screen in Terminator's Dark Fate's trailer was nothing special once you remove all of the identity politics and feminist narratives. What is presented on screen is a rehash of a rehash of a rehash of a story that has been done far better in 1984 with the Terminator, and incredibly far better in 1992's Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And as I looked at what was on that screen, I was deeply disappointed because everything on screen here was so uninspired, because when you compare what's on the screen for Terminator Dark Fate to what was presented in Terminator 2 Judgment Day, a film that was made, I think, about 27 or 28 years ago, everything in Terminator 2 appears fresher than 2019's Terminator Dark Fate. When you look at Terminator 2 Judgment Day's special effects, every special effect in Terminator 2 Judgment Day actually still withstands the test of time, and all of the action sequences still stand up as solid action sequences. And the story of Terminator 2 Judgment Day is far superior than any other Terminator film, whether it be Terminator 3, Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genesis. The Terminator franchise really has not managed to give us anything unique or special about itself ever since the days of Terminator 2 Judgment Day and James Cameron directing. Now, this film has James Cameron returning as producer, but I don't really see any of his touch on this screen as related to this film. Because when James Cameron was directing Terminator 2, it had an energy about it. It had a heart in it. It had a spirit to it. But with this one, I don't really feel any sort of heart, soul, or spirit on that screen. In fact, all I see are the same footage of the old films trying to be redone in this new film. For example, in the 1992 Terminator 2 Judgment Day, we had the T-1000 driving the truck, and that chase sequence, it was riveting and heart-pounding, and it was really action-packed, and it got you into it because it did a great job of setting up tension, because you had John Connor on that little moped trying his best to try to outrun this big truck, and then you have the T-800 following with the chase, and it all really got you into it because the action sequences were well paced, and they had built up a lot of good suspense. But this scene that I saw in Terminator Genesis with the truck, this was really bland. The CGI truck, the CGI cars, it just really felt generic, and it just felt like something that you would watch in a common TV show. It just didn't feel like something that really came out of a movie. And the whole thing with Terminator Dark Fate is that it does not feel like anything you would want to watch and spend $10, $12 for on a movie screen. In fact, it just feels like something that was cut and pasted from other movies, and the whole story feels cut and pasted from other stories. It just feels just so flat and so dry, and it's like what they're trying to do with this flat and dry story is they're trying to sell it by trying to say, oh, we're going to go from the angle of social justice where we're going to show all of these strong women. But the sad part is that we had a great story about a strong woman back in 1992. Sarah Connor's story was one of the definitive stories of a strong heroine, and we didn't really need this identity politics injected into the story of Sarah Connor, a story of a woman who showed great strength of character as she made efforts to protect her son and made efforts to try to save her son's life from this horrible killing machine. And what's really disappointing about this film is that people thought we needed a feminist Terminator when we already had a strong heroine already on screen. Again, Sarah Connor was one of the great heroines in cinema, and her story was a model for everyone as related to how to write a strong heroine in cinema. So we really did not need a social justice version of the Terminator, and we don't need a feminist Terminator robot that goes out and wants to go protect people. It just doesn't add up, and the whole thing leads to what I see on screen to be an absolutely terrible movie, because in what I saw on screen, it looks like it's the female Terminator protecting a girl with the help of Sarah Connor against the evil white male patriarchal robots. And this is the kind of stuff that alienates many comic fans, sci-fi fans, and fantasy fans from going out to go pay money to see these movies, because many of us comic fans, sci-fi fans, fantasy fans, manga fans, anime fans, we don't want to see identity politics in our stories, and we don't want social justice narratives placed in our stories. What we want to see is something like Terminator 2 Judgment Day, a great film which had a very riveting story about Sarah Connor, John Connor, and her efforts to protect John Connor, and this T-800 which was sent to protect them, and how they formed a pseudo-family and made efforts to protect each other against this T-1000 as they tried to prevent this dark future. And I believe that the Terminator franchise ended with Terminator 2 Judgment Day, because that film's ending was one of the greatest endings in American cinema. That film ended with them on the road. What that did was it left it up to our imagination to figure out what happened. And when I see that type of ending, what that does is it leaves everything open, and it leaves everything up to, again, the viewer's imagination, and that gives us the best story whatsoever. That everything, seems resolved, and it was resolved. I believe everything was resolved in Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and there was no need to go out here and make more films in this franchise. And I believe Hollywood needs to let this franchise die, because every effort they tried to revive this franchise with only makes the story worse, whether it be your Terminator 3, your Terminator Salvation, your Terminator Genesis, or your Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles. Every effort meant to try to revive this franchise winds up making the story worse when you didn't need to fix this story. The whole story was completed with Terminator 2 Judgment Day, because Terminator 2 Judgment Day, what that film did was it settled the timeline, and as I see it, closed the loop, because that was the whole thing about Terminator and Terminator 2 Judgment Day, was Reese being sent into the past creates John Connor, which creates a time loop, and their efforts to destroy everything closes the loop. So the whole story was completed in Terminator 2 Judgment Day, but because greedy Hollywood executives don't want to take risks on brand new projects and brand new stories, they go out of their way to try to keep these old franchises going when there's no need to try to keep these old franchises going. They are iconic films, and they are classic films that stand the test of time. Again, when you look at Terminator 2 Judgment Day's special effects, they are far superior to anything out there even right now. I mean, I could look at Avengers Endgame, and its special effects are nowhere near Terminator 2 Judgment Day's special effects, and they're nowhere near Terminator 2's story. When James Cameron crafted that masterpiece of a film, it really set a gold standard, or I say a platinum standard, as related to filmmaking, and not that many films can really say that they can hold up the way James Cameron's Terminator 2 Judgment Day has held up. Because I watched that film a couple of months ago, and everything in it was still fresh and original. I mean, you could watch it and compare it to, again, even Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, Black Panther. None of those films can even hold a candle to Cameron and what he did with that masterpiece of a film. But Hollywood keeps trying to top that masterpiece, and they keep trying to overcompensate using CGI to cover up for the absolutely terrible story, a story that is trying to inject, again, this feminism, identity politics, and social justice in a story that it doesn't need to be in, because these producers want to make this story about a strong woman. But the great irony is they wind up further tarnishing the story of one of the strongest women in film. I mean, Sarah Connor is an icon as related to heroines. She's right up there with Ripley as what the template should be for writing a strong heroine. So there's no need to go out here and rewrite her story and put these feminist narratives on it, because it takes away from what made Sarah Connor great. What made Sarah Connor great was she was this common woman, and she rose to greatness because she learned how to survive and adapt and overcome in these extraordinary ways. And she showed that strength of character because she wanted to be a model for her son, and she wanted to be a heroine for her son. And these are the things that made that character great. And people keep trying to reinvent the wheel with Sarah Connor and many other heroines, when everything is there to make great stories featuring a heroine. But many of these Hollywood movie studios, they want to try to promote these social justice narratives, not knowing that there's no need for this. Great stories featuring heroines show us a woman having that strength of character, and show us a great story that is compelling from beginning to middle and end. Something we don't get with Terminator Dark Fate, which a film which shows us that the fate of the Terminator franchise is just about over, because there's no place for the characters or the story to go any further, because there's no other more story to tell, and there hasn't been any more story to tell with the Terminator franchise ever since 1992, when Terminator 2 Judgment Day was released over 27 years ago. If you'd like to help me publish the first ISIS graphic novel and get it published, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications featuring strong heroines, you like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, and the Spinsterella trilogy and the Thetas, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. There you can find my stories in paperback and Kindle formats. And that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.